Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the How to Choose Happiness and Freedom Show. I'm your host, Lauren Foster, happiness teacher, founder of Be Happy First, and author of my new book that I'm so proud of, Happy and Free on Purpose, Daily Practices to Live and Love Your Life. We have decided on a new awesome thing that any way that you wind up on my email list and in my tribe, you're entered in a drawing to win a free copy of the book and a free half-hour coaching session with me. And all you have to do is claim one of our gifts, sign up for our newsletter, get connected with us in one way or another. And we'll do the first drawing on August 4th, which is my birthday, and then the beginning of the month, every month after that. So no matter what, if you wind up on the list, you're entered in the drawing to win that. And I can't wait to meet you and learn about you. Now, on to today's show. I am so honored and happy and thrilled and excited to talk to Ein Kates Sullivan. That's how you say your name, right? Yeah. Okay. Unmute yourself. Can you do that?
Yes, there we are.
Okay, yay, there you are. Okay, so I want to tell everybody just a little bit about you, but then you're going to tell us about you. So Ein has written 12 books, won more than 30 literary awards. She's the president of Infinite Light Publishing and Media, which we're going to totally talk about because she has a mission of uplifting enlightened authors and helping to put more magic into the world. And how I met her was through another podcast guest when the subject of magic and Merlin and the Arthurian legends came up. She says, "Oh, you have to meet Ein." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do." So I reached out to Ein and here we are. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me on the show. I'm delighted.
Yeah. Okay. So in your own words, tell us a little bit about who you are, what's so important to you, and how you want to see the world evolving and humanity evolving. I know that's part of your mission is to bring the sacred into our daily lives, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's so many levels to that. And where do we begin? Do we begin with the magic or do we begin with the mundane? We can start with the mundane and then we'll enter the magical realm.
Yeah. I'd however we can most quickly get to know you and who you are.
Yes.
Mundane
So
sounds good.
on the mundane level, I am an author of, I believe it's 17 books now, and I've won 49 literary awards. So we're having some fun in this ordinary world here, the world of a breed, right? If you're going into the Welsh mythology. I also run Infinite Light Publishing and Media. So I help quite a few authors who are magical and mysterious and wonderful, conscious entrepreneurs come out into the world and share their gifts. I just feel it's so important right now to share gifts for an evolving humanity. You know, we're at this crossroads, and so we need a little magic. We need a little magic in the world that we're living in. And so the next part of me, the more magical part, is really where I go when I'm questing. So I've spent 35 years, I have a doctorate in Anglo-Irish literature, and I've spent 35 years questing through magical places around the globe. So my specialty is Celtic mythology, Arthurian legend, and I've just brought out a new novel called Nimue, Freeing Merlin. So we can dive in there with the magical women of Avalon.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm envious and I am aspiring to go on quests of my own and see some of the things that you have. So maybe I will just follow in your footsteps and say, Ein, where do I go next? And what do I see next? Right. Okay. So let's talk about, I love have you seen the little TV series Merlin? The Adventures of Merlin, and I just love that show. And I'm always going back and trying to find those characters and find, oh, was that true? Did Morgana really do this? And of course, I never do find those answers. But what are the roots of the magic of the Arthurian times and of those legends?
So Arthurian legend, of course, it's mythology, but myth is always anchored in, has roots that are anchored in reality. And so the stories that we know are mostly 12th century stories that were made famous by Eleanor of Aquitaine. She was a really wonderful 12th century queen who owned land from Scotland all the way through the south of France. So she was the most powerful woman of her age. She rode on the Crusades, right? She got her silver saddle and her horse, and she rode on the Crusades. And obviously found something in the Holy Land, because when she returned, she became the most powerful woman of her age. So she loved the bardic stories, the Welsh stories, the King Arthur stories, and she made them famous in her court. And I think partly because she figured that she was a Guinevere, right?
Yes.
When you start going into the myths and legends, you realize that every age has told the stories for their generation, for the generation in which they live. And that's what I really try to do with Nimue. It's for someone living now. And but if you go back to the 5th century stories, the bardic stories, they're very different than the 12th century troubadour stories, you know, with Guinevere, and she has a little affair with Lancelot and so forth. So that you had the troubadours were really into courtly romance. But if you get back to the 5th century stories, the Fairy Grail stories, then you get 4 Guineveres. You get the May Queen, you get the empowered Guinevere, who is actually the woman of the land. And you could not be queen. I mean, you couldn't be king. I mean, she was queen. You couldn't be king unless you were married to Guinevere, unless she deemed you king. So the women of the time were very powerful, and they could see who was supposed to be the ruler of the land. And it was important, and we think about this now, why was it important for the woman to choose the masculine, the ruling masculine? It was because they knew who would keep the land in harmony and balance. Because if the land's not in harmony and balance, everything goes into despair, and the land goes into decay with droughts and floods and problems, right?
Wow,
So
yeah.
that's why the stories are important today, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, that's fascinating.
It is. And there are many authors too. And Guinevere's a title, author's a title. The one we know the best was a Roman soldier who came to defend against the Saxons, but really there's an author for each age. An author is really the person who holds civilization together. He has the round table. He invites all the different fighting factions to come and to be at peace together. That's the role of author.
And to be as equals, that
Mhm.
symbolism of the round table. So what about Merlin?
Oh, Merlin,
Yeah,
right? Our favorite. And Nimue, of course, is beloved.
right.
So Merlin appears, of course, you have to have a Merlin for each age too, right? Because Merlin is our magic. You know, each of us needs our magician. And then we see him as Gandalf, and we see him as other characters too, right?
Right.
But so Merlin is connected to Taliesin, who was a 5th century bard. And the Estifots, the old bardic stories are still told about the emergence of Taliesin and Cerwydden, who was his mother. I could tell that story if you want, but it's so Taliesin is the bard, the poet with the shining brow, which means he's the one that's still connected to the mysteries of creation. So if you go back even further, and I think this is what Merlin represents, is you have the Druids. And the Druids were basically killed off by the Romans. They definitely went underground at that time, but they were the ones who trained for 20 years. So they knew, the bards knew 250 stories of their people. And then you would train to be an ovate, which is, I mean, I think we would really enjoy right now, right? So these are the oracles of the time, who learned to read the flights of birds and the clouds and how the language of the trees and so forth. And after 20 years of that, you might be able to become a druid. Men and women could both be druids. And they were the ones who were just really tapped into the mysterious universe and how it's unfolding and how our culture interrelates with the planet and how the planet's speaking and how we work with the every evolving and changing planet. They knew that the planet wasn't still. You know, just because we have a border doesn't mean the weather's not going to change, right?
Right.
Right. So they're the mysterious, magical ones. And of course, back in the day, in the Celtic days, every king had a druid. So like Connor of Ulster would have his druid Cathbad, and you really wouldn't make a decision. First of all, you couldn't be a king without your queen. I think his first wife was Maeve, who was quite a character. And also you really wouldn't make a decision without your druid. So I like the little trinity, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. So you have the masculine, the feminine, and the magic and the sorcerer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have that within us too, you know? We have our feminine, our masculine, and our magic. Right?
And our magic, right. All right. So, and it's been so much on my mind lately about, there was a very big period of my life where I kind of, I had this wall up between me and spirit. I had a little breakup with God because I got confused and thought that because the church didn't approve of me, that meant God didn't approve of me either.
Oh no. Oh dear goodness.
I know. Isn't that a terrible thing to have? That's an awful thing to happen to a young girl, right?
Oh, it's been happening for so long. Yeah.
Right. But I eventually came back around and got reconnected with who I am and with spirit that's in everything and not just in that one building in that little town, So it's okay that all of that happened, but it feels like as a species, as a race, as a planet, that we have closed ourselves off from magic and from spirit and from all of these things. And how can we help people to get back there? Because it's not a whole life. When you're going through just as you, this teeny tiny powerless human,
powerless is the word, right?
Yeah.
And then if you look right now on our planet, I really do feel it with everything that's going on, that a lot of people, I mean, there's a lot of depression and a lot of people feeling lost. And I have to say, when I started my quest, my own personal quest, I was in England and I was at university, I was doing my doctorate, and I was also struggling. I was struggling with the church. I was raised as a Protestant. I wanted to make my own connection with the divine, and I didn't know how to do it. I wasn't finding that at church. I didn't feel persecuted, at least not this lifetime. I'm sure maybe some other lifetimes, but I just felt that there was something more, that I needed to find the feminine. And to me, and that's what my Legends of the Grail stories are about, I went in search of, I call it the chalice, right? I went in search of the chalice. And luckily, in Arthurian legend, that was the gateway in for me. I actually really started looking for Mary Magdalene first, and that leads directly into the Arthurian legends. So if you look at the stories of the Templars, and if you go back to the Essenes and the Cathars, and then the stories of the Fairy Grail, these worlds start opening up, and then you realize that we have actually disconnected from a very rich lineage that has presented itself again. I just have this feeling that so many people are going to start blossoming in this way now, that it's just time for the oracles to reemerge.
Right.
And partly because we have to remake our connection, a conscious connection with nature, with the natural world. So when we disconnect, as you say, when we disconnect from an aspect of ourselves, whether that's the magical part, whether that's the feminine, or whether it's the masculine, because I think the masculine's struggling now too. It's not just one faction.
Great.
If we're disconnected from any of those parts, we suffer. And so a quest, to me, I mean, Joseph Campbell would call it the hero's journey. You go on the hero's journey. And in my quests, I call it the heroine's journey. It's a little bit different. I mean, Arthur would ride into the underworld and steal the cauldron. But in the heroine's journey, it's more about going to the sacred places I mean, there are wonderful pilgrimage places all through Europe, but they're also all through the United States too. They're just not as well known. Obviously, my first experience was at the Chalice Well in Glastonbury, which started to open up all kinds of magical sites. But here, really, any stream, any well, any, standing by the ocean, any watery place is an invitation to open to the feminine, to the fairy. I call it the Fairy Grail. And the fairy, that's more connected to the pre-Christian stories that are well known in the Welsh mythology. And if you read my book, Heroines of Avalon, you'll meet Erin, who created Blue who was a flower fairy who took on the life and had difficulties with love. But they're all each of these characters is speaking for this age, what she struggled with and how she needs to express herself in the age in which we live now.
Right.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And, I deliberately manifested this exact situation that I wanted for myself. I'm surrounded by mountains. I'm deep in the Appalachian Mountains of East Tennessee, and there are places in my backyard that look like what's behind you right now with, the
In here, right?
yeah, yeah. I can wander up into just a mystery just like that, and within 50 yards, feel like I'm the only person in the world in this
I
forest.
completely understand. I actually live in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I saw we're neighbors.
Yeah.
I'm in Virginia.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We are neighbors.
We are
That's
neighbors,
amazing. Yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
right. And so, but I feel like I can find spirit, I can find eternalness, I can find sacredness in a tree, in a leaf, in the face of my dog, in that this conversation with you, and all of these little things that are happening every minute, but we somehow aren't seeing them, we're not feeling them, we're not benefiting them and tapping into all of that magic. And this is what I want for the world. I wanted to help us figure out how we can help people to get reconnected with who they really are, with the all the facets of themselves as a spiritual being, having this one little short journey as a human being.
These eternal beings that keep taking bodies and moving on.
Yeah.
We live in a very magical place. I mean, people want to do pilgrimage now here in the United States. The Appalachian Mountains are online. They are really, really online. I would say that might be one of the most exciting things that's going on today. I mean, I know we look at the news and we go, oh my gosh, but the Appalachian Mountains have come online like they haven't for, some people say 12,000 years. So we're living in a place that's incredibly magical.
What does that mean? What do you mean by coming online?
So I did this little, I have a fellow I follow named Rory Duff. You might enjoy him. I've interviewed him several times. You might have him on your show, but he's a biogeologist or geobiologist. I think he's a geobiologist, and he has been studying Stonehenge for many, many years. And so he just started out with, I think he started out just, working for an oil company. And then he started saying, oh my goodness, there are these sacred sites in England, and they all online. He met Hamish Miller and he started reading the dragon lines, right? And he was like, oh, they're dragon lines. And then he started reading them globally. So one of the things that we've been doing is reading the sacred sites. So I took a group to Avebury. This is 2017. And so what happened is I said, oh, look, they're 12-foot ley lines here. They've been here forever. This is where you go if you want to awaken to your fairy grail, your spiritual essence. Well, it wasn't 12 feet wide. It was 33 feet wide. And they've been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is happening all over the world now, that all the sacred sites all over the planet are coming back online. And that includes the sacred feminine vortexes throughout the Appalachian Mountains. We're in the perfect place.
Very cool. I'm gonna figure out the spelling of this man's name and how to contact him. So wherever you're watching or listening to this, if you look in the notes, I'll give you a way to learn more about everything that we talk about, because it is so fascinating and so interesting to me that, yeah. And the information is, and the knowledge is never ending. I could have a show every day for the rest of my life and never talk to all the people that know all the things about. I mean, that never even occurred to me to think about what was going on underneath the earth
Mm-hmm.
in the mountains that I live in, but I will now.
Right?
It's
so exciting. It's so exciting. So his name it's Rory, Rory Duff, Duff. And he's
Rory
written a
Duff.
book called Grail Found. Which is
That's
how I got in touch with him, because I was like, the Grail's been found? Tell me.
Right.
I want to know. How has
Right.
the Grail been found? And so this is it. When people go and they find their places in nature, now you can find these lovely, lovely places all over the globe. And you can nurture that space. You can get up every morning and put your feet on the soil, nurture that space, get in touch with all of the elements, and activate your own Taurus field. And if you think about a Taurus field, it's like a Vesica of Pisces, the Taurus field.
Mhm.
It has a grail in the middle. It has a chalice. So what you're doing is you're activating your own divine essence so that you can be fully embodied and fully awake and magical. The three parts, right? The masculine, the feminine, and the magical.
And the magical, right. All right. So, but what if you live in New York City and you're surrounded by concrete in every direction?
New York City has a very special place, very, very, very special place. And in fact, if you're in New York City, try to do this. The Statue of Liberty sits on a spiritual vortex that is wide awake, absolutely wide awake. So if you're in New York City, you can absolutely tune into the earth. Well, I'm sure the statue is quite alive too, but there's a vortex that goes deep into the earth and up, and it spreads out all over the globe. So if you think about the Statue of Liberty for a minute, she's sent hope out to people all around the globe for a very, very long time. Mm-hmm. And before the statue was there, the Native Americans looked after that space, and there was always a fire in that place, always the eternal flame. So when you tap into something like the Statue of Liberty, first of all, you're helping spiritual energy spread across the United States.
Right.
And also you're feeding your own flame. So it's your flame, but also the eternal flame that has existed throughout all time, space, and dimension that's awakening now. We're in a massive awakening,
Yeah, that's so very cool. And that someone had to choose that space for that statue, and their inspiration, did it come from that amazing energy? I think so.
Well, she still holds the flame, the eternal flame. So she's sort of one of the Vestal Virgins, if you like, still fight for humanity.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what if you live in another concrete city?
Well, this is one thing I'll say. Even if you find yourself in a difficult situation. I mean, I actually really like living. I've lived in London. London's got all sorts of things going on. That's a whole. You can find out all sorts of things about the magic of London. Check out John Matthews and Caitlin Matthews' work. And then if you live in London, you're in the magical stream. But almost all cities were built because of some special energy in the place. And we think of New York as being more of a city for merchants, but it's actually a city of light. And I mean, you look across the whole globe, people gather. I mean, Los Angeles is a city that where people have an enormous amount of creative energy. So that's a real strong vortex there too. So wherever you are in the world is perfect. It's perfect. Now, depending on what's unfolding for you and how you're living your life purpose and mission, you might need to shift or move or change, or maybe just anchor where you are. The other thing is this: at any moment, even if we're in jail, we can close our eyes and start to access an inner world that is free and available for everyone. You just walk right through here.
That's right. This is where I wanted to get you to, is that the trees and the streams and the ocean and everything are beautiful and magical and awesome, but not that you don't have to have them. If you happen to be in a place where you can't get your feet in the ocean, there you can go within. Yeah. Just like what you
Absolutely.
just said. Yeah.
You can learn to be a walker between worlds. And I feel that it's important now to learn to be a walker between worlds. It's In the Druid, in a historical sense, we have the Druids, and what the Druids did was that they learned the Druid is the wise ones of the oaks, the knowers of the oaks, and so they created a language called the Ogham, the Ogham, and it was the language of the trees, and they would journey through trees to the four realms known in the Welsh mythology. So you would have a Noon, you would have the underworld of a Noon where the fairy folks were. Right, so you see this in Lord of the Rings, right? He's got the same map. So you got the elves live down there in Rivendell, so you can go to that realm, right. And you can go to physical places too in Wales where it looks a little bit like this. But in our inner world, we're connecting to the fairy folk, and then we have the world of Agreed, which is Middle Earth, where humans hang out. But then there are different dimensions in that world too, because they're the places where men battle, but there are also other places where people are doing conscious business and helping each other thrive and all that, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have the world of Guinevere, which is the White Lands, and that's where the guardians hang out. So the ones that would help the ladies of the lake and Merlin and the magical ones and our angels, our guardians, they live there. And so we can also travel to the world of Guinevere, and then the whole thing is encased in something called Sigant, which is the Great One. And I've always loved that 5th century bardic model because it helps me understand that I can be in many places and yet I'm always in one space.
Right. So interesting. So very, very fascinating. I love it so much. and well, we could talk about myths and legends. I could stay on this subject all day, but I want to make certain that I get as much out of you for my listeners as I can. So let's shift a little bit to talking about your publishing company. And I feel like there's very few among us that don't have a book in us. And I've always loved books, and I've always loved that's an escape. We read your book and we're spending time in the world that you created for us. And I just think that that's a really magical place. So speak to the person out there who is like, I don't think I have a book in me.
this person. Well, actually, I think everyone that I meet says they do have a book in them.
I think so.
Think about it for a minute. Everyone has a story to tell. Everyone you speak to has at least one story. Yeah. And it can be a difficult story. It can be a beautiful story. It can be a fairy tale. It can be a horror story. But everyone has a story. And I think the power of writing stories down, connecting to a thread of storytelling, is that you actually start to understand the trajectory of your own life, because we co-create the world that we're in. So we might not have complete control over the external, but we can definitely, when we tap into the elementals, to the different forces, we can definitely act as co-creators. So we can start manifesting the worlds that we would like to see here. And so we start to pay attention to the story that we're telling. You would just put it on your phone and listen to it, go, oh my gosh, I told that story again. It's a terrible story. I don't think I'm going to tell that one again. Tell a different kind of story. I'm going to reboot that story. And that terrible failure that I had, that was an incredible learning experience. And I learned so much from that it changed my life. And now, so storytelling is powerful.
It is.
It's very powerful.
And I teach a whole segment in the Happy and Free on Purpose book, in the course that's coming up, on crafting a new story that you're writing for your life. But not until this moment did it click into my mind that it's literally like that, like managing the trajectory of your life through storytelling and choosing the stories that you tell, and letting the stories that were your past life benefit that trajectory, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're all on a hero or heroine's journey. All of us are.
Yeah.
I have in some of the classes that I teach, I'll put a silk on the ground, and we look at the map of the hero's journey, and we figure out where we are on that journey, which is always fascinating. Because once we understand where we are on the journey, we can also understand what we're aiming for, which is, of course, wholeness. It's the Holy Grail ultimately.
Right.
We might be in a difficult part of the journey, but that's also an important time to tell a story. I mean, the reason the bards learned 250 stories of their people is because they knew when they got into difficult times, they needed the story to get through.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
before so, and again, now, modern, media that is representing non-modern times, it's always popping into my mind, and the bards that are telling stories and sharing information through, and entertaining, and providing communication between communities by sharing their stories. So
And wisdom.
that
And
yeah,
wisdom. I think the
and
important
wisdom.
part is that, I mean, we don't always do that now with our movies and our stories. We don't always pass wisdom through. I mean, because if you even if you think of the tarot for a minute, that one of the reasons in Italy that they created these the tarot with the court cards, and is because they were still teaching the cardinal virtues. We forget about that, right?
Yeah.
But in each culture, you'll find that there was some aspect of wisdom that we were passing forward so that our children could live on. We always had, every generation has this challenge,
Hmm.
right? So but if we're tapped into the wisdom keepers and they go, this is what we're learning in this particular generation, we need to probably connect to the feminine and nature more so that we can continue to live and thrive, right?
Right. Absolutely. Excuse me. Okay, so this is going to put you on the spot just a little bit, but no, not really. I can't help but notice that the trajectory of your life was, you found something that really interested you, and you grabbed that thread and you kept following that, and into literature and into writing and into publishing and into this beautiful life that you have now. Where's that starting point? How can people who feel like they don't know their purpose or don't know their path and don't have anything just really pulling at them, how can they find that first thread that you found that will help them to get on the map and on their own heroine's journey?
So I know people look at me now and they go, oh my goodness, you have this publishing company, all these. So it looks good. Like what's going on looks good. And I'm really happy to be in this place of wholeness and balance. And I love my world that I'm living in now. But it started because I was very, very depressed. And my uncle that I was living with committed suicide, and I felt really lost. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to live a life of despair and sadness and disconnection, and I need to find something more. So I actually went in search of meaning, and that changed everything. That really did change everything. And I did, for a while, drop out of the culture on my quest through. And for a while I thought, am I just really incredibly odd? Here I am, like wandering the wilds of Ireland. Nobody's here except a few sheep and some stones. But there was something that started happening inside, where I call it the awakening of the Glacier, the Taliesin's brow, the inner light, where I started going, oh, there's really something that I forgot about. I forgot about the other world. I forgot that we're never alone, ever. And that we each have a life purpose and mission. And that if we listen to our fairy folk and our guardians, if we are the stewards of our life, then they can work with us to create worlds upon worlds that are amazing. And so, to come back and then start a business, and it just seems like, this is something I actually feel that we're getting ready to go into a renaissance. I know everything looks bleak, but my sense, because of the mountains are awakening, right? And people have been locked inside, they've been writing their books. I feel that the spirit of the human is strong. And so there are going to be many people who are going to come out with new ideas and new technologies and new, all sorts of new music and all sorts of things. It's going to come forward, and I can feel it. I feel it in the earth. I feel it bubbling up. So I don't think we need to despair. I think we need to get really creative. And
Got it.
you
Yeah.
know, yeah.
Yes, I agree completely. And that's an awesome place to end this. And, want to make certain that everyone heard the point of use your pain to propel you in the direction of exploration and, and let it be a catalyst, help you find something new and something different, something amazing, like sheep and stones in Ireland. That
Like, right?
I totally want to be there.
I think it's really important to stay curious. I would say, sort of Alice in the Forest, right? If you just stay really curious about wherever you happen to be, it doesn't really matter where you are, but if you're really curious in the moment that you're in, then your inner child wakes up and all of a sudden everything becomes wondrous and everything becomes magical. And the people you meet are wondrous. Like meeting you is wondrous and magical, right?
Yeah, it's
And then
totally
we can
cool.
support each other. And that's what Infinite Light Publishing is about. It's just supporting other people, finding their voices and getting their messages out into the world so that we co-create a really marvelous, blossoming earth together. So my motto is messages for an evolving humanity. So
I love it. I love it so very, very much. Okay. So is there a simple website that you can say out loud for people who happen to just be listening and not able to click on a link?
Yeah, you can find the publishing website on infinitelightpublishing.com.
That's easy.
That's all our authors and all our books on it. And then if you want to find out more about my books, they're there, but you can go and you'll find out my teachings and all sorts of other things and colors and quests on AynKateSullivan.com. So it's AynKateSullivan.com.
And it's Ayn.
Well, actually, you did the correct pronunciation, which is Ayn, which is
Ayn. Okay, gotcha.
But a lot of people call me Ayn, which means light. That's a little my Irish twist. So anyway.
So you'll answer to either, right?
Right. So it depends which way we're going.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Ayn. I'm just so thrilled to have met you, and I'm definitely going to stay in touch. I'm going to read your books. We will do this again for sure.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Thank you. All right. So it's I'm Kate Sullivan. You can find her interview, all kinds of free gifts and things like that over at laurengfoster.com. And wherever you are, be sure to subscribe and like and comment. And this is putting your mark and doing your part to magnify the light that I brought to our show today. So I love you dearly. Thank you so much. Until next week, remember that happiness is a choice and you can always choose to be happy first. I'll see you next week.